Imagine flipping through an old book, taking in that distinctive smell of pages that have survived through centuries. Suddenly, you stumble upon something that feels like an extension of the Bible's stories, but isn't something you've ever heard about in church. That's exactly what the Book of Jubilees is. A manuscript that, while shedding light on parts of Genesis, also challenges traditional interpretations. So why was this book left out of the Bible we know today? Maybe because its stories shake up certainties and raise questions that few are ready to face. From details about creation to secrets of the patriarchs, the Jubilees is like a window into a sacred world that's been partially hidden. One of the biggest controversies surrounding this book is how it reinterprets the events of Genesis. It doesn't just reaffirm the story of creation, it expands it. For instance, when describing the separation of waters and the emergence of light, it suggests that everything was meticulously recorded on heavenly tablets like God's personal journal. But hold on, doesn't that sound like a mystery begging to be explored? If everything was documented, how did these details escape the Bible we read today? And what about the revelations concerning the patriarchs? The Book of Jubilees feels like that friend who spills the truth behind the truth. Now, think about the term Little Genesis, which the Book of Jubilees is often called. It doesn't just complement Genesis, it builds on it, adding a wealth of detail that seems straight from the heavens. Did you know that, according to Jubilees, God explained each act of creation to the angels as he carried it out? This idea of constant interaction between the divine and the celestial is absolutely fascinating. What if angels were, so to speak, God's first students? Doesn't that totally change how we think about the heavens and the earth? Another unique aspect of the book is how it delves into the lives of patriarchs like Adam, Enoch, and Abraham. The Book of Jubilees offers a level of detail that's almost unsettling. For example, it claims that Enoch, besides being taken by God, was given secret knowledge about the cycles of time and eternal laws. Sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But it's there, recorded as sacred narrative. It makes you wonder, how much do we really know about the lives of these great men of the Bible? What's perhaps most intriguing is the tone of the Book of Jubilees. It doesn't just tell stories, it teaches. Imagine reading something that not only narrates but also challenges your beliefs. It hints at a hidden divine order, a kind of celestial operating system, governing not just the heavens but human behavior too. This concept feels so modern, almost like a spiritual version of how we understand the world today. Strange as it might sound, isn't there something comforting in the idea of a divine order, even in things we don't fully understand? Some scholars argue that the Book of Jubilees was excluded from the biblical canon because it was too controversial. It doesn't just contradict certain traditions, it also offers a unique perspective on God. For instance, its idea of a fixed divine calendar, which is detailed later, is groundbreaking. It paints God as a meticulous organizer, setting not just times and seasons, but also eras and events in human history. It's as if he mapped out every detail before even saying, "Let there be light." But let's think about this. Why would something like that be excluded? Was challenging traditions a theological crime back then? Or was the Book of Jubilees simply ahead of its time? In an era where literal interpretations of the Bible were the norm, introducing such visionary ideas could have been dangerous. It makes you reflect on how our own ideas are often shaped by conventions. How many times do we let traditions hold us back, instead of venturing into the unknown? Beyond that, the Book of Jubilees stirs a fascinating discomfort when it talks about God's relationship with time. It describes a God who didn't just create time, but uses it as a tool to execute his divine plan. It makes you think, how do we see time in our own lives? Are we just racing against it? Or are we learning to use it for something greater? This book reminds us that time, above all, is sacred, and that God might be more present in our daily routines than we realize. Another striking feature of the Book of Jubilees is how it connects spiritual events to historical occurrences. For instance, it portrays the lives of the patriarchs as pieces of a cosmic puzzle, each playing a specific role in God's plan. This perspective not only enriches our understanding of the Bible, but also prompts us to ask, could our own lives be part of something bigger? Maybe the challenges we face are actually pieces of a plan we just can't see yet. Ultimately, the Book of Jubilees opens the door to something greater. It invites us to question what we consider sacred knowledge. It suggests that there's more to the divine story than what we've been taught. And in doing so, it creates the perfect segue into the next topic. Because if time is sacred and ordered by God, as Jubilees suggests, what does that mean for how we measure it? Maybe the answer lies in our next point, the divine calendar. Have you ever stopped to think about how we measure time? Minutes, hours, days, months. It all feels so natural, right? But what if I told you that, according to the Book of Jubilees, our modern calendar might actually be out of sync with divine order? Yep, you heard that right. This ancient manuscript proposes a solar calendar with 364 days, which it claims was designed by God himself. Unlike the lunar calendar, full of irregularities, this system is said to be flawless, perfectly aligned with creation and the cycles ordained by God. So why don't we use this calendar today? That question opens the door to a whole new perspective on time, one that's far deeper than just a way to organize our lives. According to Jubilees, the lunar calendar, which has guided most cultures since ancient times, introduces imperfections into the divine cycles. It's like trying to fit the wrong puzzle piece into a spot. It might fit, but it's not the right piece. The solar calendar, on the other hand, preserves the perfection God established from the very beginning. Think about it. 364 exact days, divided into 52 weeks of 7 days each. A cycle that's not only mathematically precise, but also spiritually aligned with God's purposes. This idea makes us question how we perceive time and whether we're truly living in harmony with divine design. Now, imagine what it would be like to live by this calendar. No months that are longer or shorter than others, no confusion caused by leap years. The consistency would feel almost like a celestial symphony, with each note or day falling perfectly into place. In a way, it reminds us that God isn't just the creator, but also the ultimate organizer of the universe. And by stepping away from this order, maybe we're losing a vital part of the plan he intended for us. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Book of Jubilees is how it connects time to spirituality. According to the text, every day and every season holds special meaning within God's plan. For instance, Jubilees claims that religious festivals and celebrations should be observed on specific dates, as determined by this solar calendar. Imagine the impact of that, celebrating Christmas or Easter on dates that truly align with divine time, instead of following traditions rooted in human conventions. Let's bring this back to our daily lives. How many times have you felt lost in time, like the days are rushing by too fast or feel completely chaotic? The Book of Jubilees invites us to rethink this relationship. It suggests that living in sync with God's time could bring more structure and peace to our routines. This doesn't mean you need to switch calendars right away, but maybe start by noticing natural cycles, the sunrise, the sunset, the changing seasons, and reflecting on how they could influence your spiritual life. Interestingly, some religious communities still follow systems based on the solar calendar. Take the Essenes, for example. They believed this was God's true time. They dedicated themselves to living in harmony with these cycles, convinced it brought them closer to divine will. Can you imagine what that meant for them? It was a way of living with purpose, where every single day carried a greater meaning, not just as a measure of hours, but as part of something eternal and divine. This concept of a fixed calendar also gives us something to think about when it comes to consistency in our own lives. Just like the solar calendar doesn't change, God is constant. It's a reminder for us to seek stability in our lives, keeping our focus on eternal principles even in a world that's always shifting. Think about it. What could you do to bring more consistency into your life? Maybe it's adjusting your daily habits or committing to a routine of prayer and reflection. Small changes like these could help connect us to that bigger plan we so often forget about. The Book of Jubilees also warns of the consequences of ignoring this sacred time. It suggests that straying from the solar calendar has led to spiritual confusion and a growing distance from God. And honestly, doesn't that make sense? When we disconnect from the Creator, we become more vulnerable to chaos. It's like an orchestra where every musician is playing a different tune. To restore harmony, the first step is recognizing that we might be out of sync with the divine rhythm. One particularly intriguing point is how Jubilees ties time to redemption. It suggests that the solar calendar isn't just a practical tool, but also a constant reminder of God's plan to save humanity. Each day, each season, serves as a living testament to His divine promise. It's as if time itself isn't just a tool, but a way for God to communicate His grace and love to us. And this brings us to an even more thought-provoking question. If time is sacred, what about those who were created to govern it? The next topic in the Book of Jubilees takes us into the origin and role of angels, those celestial beings who, according to the text, were created to organize the universe and oversee the cycles of time. A perfect transition to keep unraveling the mysteries of God's divine plan. Since the very beginning of creation, a fascinating idea emerges in the Book of Jubilees. Angels not only exist but play a key role in organizing the universe. According to the text, they were created by God on the first day, even before there was light or solid ground. Picture that. Celestial beings designed to maintain divine order in a cosmos yet to be formed. They don't just observe God's work, they're an integral part of it. This perspective invites us to reflect on how these beings influence our understanding of the world and spirituality. One of the most intriguing roles of angels described in the Book of Jubilees is as guardians of time. They are the overseers of seasons, lunar and solar cycles, ensuring that everything runs according to God's established order. Think of it as a heavenly orchestra, with each angel conducting a specific aspect of the universe. It's a reminder that the precision of the cosmos isn't random. It's intentional and carefully monitored. According to Jubilees, angels were also created to protect humanity. But their protection goes beyond the physical. It's deeply spiritual. They're described as intermediaries between God and man, delivering divine messages and ensuring God's purposes are fulfilled. It makes you wonder about their role in our own lives. Haven't we all felt that inexplicable sense of protection at some point? Maybe, as Jubilee suggests, that's an angel at work. A classic example of this interaction can be found in the story of Abraham. According to the Book of Jubilees, Abraham received direct instructions from angels on how to live in alignment with God's will. Imagine what it would be like to have access to that kind of direct guidance. Abraham not only listened but followed those instructions, becoming a living example of how angels influence the fulfillment of God's plan. Another fascinating revelation is that angels have hierarchies and specific roles. Some are guardians, others messengers, and still others govern the natural elements. For instance, Jubilees mentions that certain angels oversee the winds, rain, and even harvests. This concept reminds us how every part of creation is interconnected and supervised by a higher power. But not all angels followed this divine plan. The Book of Jubilees also touches on the fall of angels, those who rebelled against God and went on to corrupt humanity. This part of the narrative is a powerful reminder that even beings created for perfection can choose to stray from their path. It's a profound reflection on free will, not just for angels, but for us humans too. Did you know that, according to Jubilees, angels also instructed Noah after the flood? They guided him in rebuilding the earth and re-establishing divine laws. Imagine the weight of Noah's responsibility, being the only man with direct access to this celestial wisdom. It's a testament to how God never abandons His creation, always sending guides to ensure His plan moves forward. Another interesting aspect is how angels are deeply tied to the concept of divine justice. They don't just protect, they also carry out God's judgment. It makes you think about their role in historical events and even in your own life. How often have we felt like something greater was at work, to correct an injustice. Jubilees suggests that angels are constantly working behind the scenes to balance the scales of divine justice. The Book of Jubilees also prompts us to consider the impact of angels on our relationship with time. If they were created to govern it, perhaps our connection to the sacred is closer to them than we realize. This invites us to reflect. How can we align our routines and daily actions with this celestial plan? Maybe the answer lies in recognizing natural cycles and honoring moments of rest and renewal. And so, the Book of Jubilees sets the stage for an even deeper understanding of the spiritual challenges humanity faces. As we explore the narrative of the fallen angels and their consequences, we're led seamlessly into the next chapter, how these events gave rise to the Nephilim, and eventually the flood that reshaped the Earth's history. A chapter that promises to unveil even more mysteries and spiritual challenges. There's something mysterious and downright unsettling about reading about the Nephilim in the Book of Jubilees. These beings, described as giants born from the union of fallen angels and human women, mark a dark chapter in humanity's history. Think about the weight of this revelation. Powerful but corrupt beings who brought chaos and destruction to the world. They weren't just giants in stature, but in their devastating actions, spreading violence and corruption so extensively that the flood became inevitable. According to the Book of Jubilees, these fallen angels, led by figures like Azazel, didn't just mingle with humanity. They also shared forbidden knowledge, such as forging weapons and practicing magic. Just imagine the impact of that on an ancient civilization. Knowledge meant for good turned into tools of destruction. It's a powerful reminder of how knowledge can be a blessing or a curse, depending on how it's used. The impact of the Nephilim wasn't confined to the physical world. The Book of Jubilees describes how they also corrupted the spiritual realm. Violence and sin became so rampant that the very earth cried out to God for justice. It makes you think about how our actions can ripple out, affecting not just our lives but the balance of the world around us. Have you ever considered how your choices impact the bigger picture? And then comes the flood, a cataclysmic event that, according to Jubilees, wasn't just a response to corruption, but a way to purify the earth and restore divine order. The flood wasn't only about destruction, it was about renewal. Picture the immensity of that scene. Waters covering mountains, washing away every trace of injustice and evil. It's a powerful lesson that, even in moments of chaos, God is working to restore and renew. Noah, described in the Book of Jubilees as a righteous man, was chosen to preserve humanity and the creatures of the earth. Think about the enormous responsibility he carried, building an ark, gathering animals, and enduring the disbelief of those around him. Noah didn't just follow God's instructions. He placed unwavering trust in the divine plan, even when everything around him seemed to be falling apart. His story is a testament to trusting God, especially in times of uncertainty. One fascinating detail in the Book of Jubilees is the covenant God made with Noah after the flood. This covenant, symbolized by the rainbow, serves as a reminder of God's promise never to destroy the earth with water again. But Jubilees goes further. It suggests that this covenant also included specific instructions on how humanity should live, moving forward to avoid repeating past mistakes. Did you know that the Book of Jubilees also explores the connection between the Nephilim and evil spirits? According to the text, after their destruction in the flood, the spirits of the Nephilim continued to roam the earth, spreading temptation and corruption. This adds another layer of complexity, hinting that the fallout from these beings' rebellion may still affect the world today. Another compelling aspect is how Jubilees ties the flood to future redemption. It describes how, even as God judged humanity, he was already envisioning a greater plan for salvation. It's a reminder that even in moments of judgment, divine grace is never far away. Think about it. Every challenge we face might just be preparation for something greater that God has planned for us. The story of the Nephilim and the flood also invites us to reflect on human responsibility. Just as Noah's contemporaries ignored the warnings and went their own way, how often do we overlook the signs in our own lives? The Book of Jubilees challenges us to wake up and align our actions with God's purposes. And so, as we explore the impact of the Nephilim and the meaning of the flood, we are naturally led to consider the laws and teachings that followed. According to Jubilees, these laws weren't just given to Moses. They were also shared with earlier figures like Adam and Abraham through the angels. A perfect segue into the next topic, where we'll dive into the origins of these eternal laws and their connection to God's divine plan. One striking aspect of the Book of Jubilees is the idea that God's laws didn't start with Moses. They've been passed down since the very beginning of humanity. Picture this: Adam, Noah, and Abraham all receiving divine guidance directly through angels. These celestial messengers weren't just delivering messages, they were teaching the eternal will of God. Doesn't that completely shift how we view biblical history? It suggests that God has always been actively teaching and guiding His creation. According to Jubilees, the laws passed on by the angels weren't just temporary rules, they were expressions of God's eternal order. This means the moral and spiritual principles we follow today are part of a larger, unchanging, universal plan. Think about how that reinforces the idea that living according to God's laws isn't just about obedience. It's about living in harmony with creation itself. One intriguing example is how these laws were adapted to the circumstances of each era. Adam was given instructions for life in Eden, while Noah was taught how to rebuild a world devastated by the flood. Imagine the wisdom it took to apply the same principles in such vastly different contexts. This flexibility teaches us that while God's principles are eternal, their application can vary, depending on the needs of the moment. Did you know the laws delivered by angels also included practical, everyday guidance? According to Jubilees, Noah was taught about farming, crop cycles, and even how to care for animals. This shows that God cares not just about the spiritual, but also the material and practical aspects of life. What a powerful lesson for us today, right? Maybe we should spend more time considering how our daily habits can be acts of worship too. Another fascinating point is how these laws were tied to the concept of covenant. Each time laws were delivered through the angels, they reinforced the bond between God and humanity. Think about the rainbow as the sign of God's promise to Noah, or circumcision as the mark of the covenant with Abraham. These rituals weren't just symbolic. They were constant reminders of humanity's commitment to the Creator. According to Jubilees, the angels also played a crucial role in the moral education of future generations. They taught Noah how to pass down God's laws to his children, ensuring that sacred knowledge would be preserved. That makes us think about our own responsibility to teach and pass on the values we hold dear. How are you inspiring the next generation to live in harmony with God's principles? One standout idea in Jubilees is that these laws weren't just for humanity. They were meant for angels too. Yep, even celestial beings were expected to live in accordance with God's order. Doesn't that add a fascinating layer to the story? If even angels are subject to God's laws, how much more so are we as part of His earthly creation? Have you ever thought about how these laws could apply today? The Book of Jubilees challenges us to see morality not as something relative, but as part of an eternal system that transcends time and culture. This means values like justice, honesty, and compassion are timeless. What if we took some time to reflect on how we can live out those principles in our modern lives? Another intriguing point is that these laws weren't meant to be a burden. They were a source of blessings. Jubilees describes how those who followed God's laws experienced prosperity, peace, and harmony. It makes you wonder, what if obedience to God's will is the key to unlocking a fuller, more meaningful life? Maybe it's worth considering how small acts of faithfulness could transform our reality. And so, as we explore how divine laws were passed down by angels, it becomes clear they're more than just rules. They're an invitation to align our lives with God's eternal plan. The next chapter takes us even deeper, exploring the spiritual and national conflicts that arose in the fulfillment of this plan. A journey that promises to uncover the hidden forces at play in humanity's story. The Book of Jubilees challenges us to see nations and their histories in a completely new light. According to it, The struggles between peoples aren't just historical events. They're reflections of much larger spiritual conflicts. Imagine this: each nation influenced by spiritual forces, some aligned with God, others rebelling against Him. Doesn't that change the way we view human history? Earthly conflicts are just one part of a much deeper, broader battle. One of the most fascinating narratives is the relationship between the descendants of Jacob and Esau. The Book of Jubilees describes this rivalry as more than just a family feud. It symbolizes a spiritual battle between good and evil, between those who follow God's ways and those who stray from His will. Ever thought about how our own daily conflicts might reflect something bigger? An internal struggle between doing what's right and giving in to temptation. According to the text, God set boundaries for every nation, assigning them their portion of the earth and their role in His divine plan. Yet many of these nations rebelled, seeking to expand their territory and power. This disobedience wasn't just a political affront, it was a spiritual one. It makes you reflect on how greed and unchecked ambition can pull us away from God's purpose for us. Jubilees also suggests that every nation has a spiritual prince representing it in the heavenly realm. Some of these figures remain loyal to God, while others have rebelled, becoming agents of corruption and chaos. Think of it as a kind of celestial chessboard, where each piece plays a role in a complex game shaping humanity's history. It's worth considering. What spiritual influences might be at work in our own lives and nations? The rivalry between Jacob and Esau is a classic example of this dynamic. While Jacob aligns himself with God and receives divine blessing, Esau goes astray, symbolizing those who choose their own paths over God's will. This story challenges us to reflect on our own choices. Are we aligning with God's plan, or are we chasing after our own desires? An interesting point is how Jubilees connects these disputes to future events. It suggests that the conflicts between nations aren't just echoes of the past. They're part of a preparation for the fulfillment of prophecies. Every battle, every conquest, plays into a bigger plan that will culminate in the establishment of God's final kingdom. It makes you wonder, how might our actions today shape the spiritual and historical future? Did you know the Book of Jubilees also highlights the responsibility of the chosen people amidst these conflicts? The descendants of Jacob were called to be a light to the nations, showing God's way in the midst of chaos. But this isn't just about them. It's a call to us as well. How can we be examples of justice and kindness in such a divided world? Another fascinating aspect is the idea that even amid the conflicts, God remains fully in control. Jubilees describes how He uses even the rebellions of nations to fulfill His greater plan. That's a powerful reminder that, no matter how chaotic things seem, God is still sovereign. Think about it. How can we learn to trust God more, even during turbulent times? This narrative also encourages us to reflect on our own spiritual battles. Just as nations face spiritual forces, we too face daily struggles in our personal lives. The Book of Jubilees urges us to seek God's path, even when challenges and temptations arise. After all, every choice we make contributes to this greater battle between light and darkness. And so, as we explore the cosmic and national conflicts described in Jubilees, we're led to consider how God works through history and individuals to accomplish His plan. The next chapter takes us to a monumental event, the Exodus, which, according to Jubilees, wasn't just a physical liberation but also a spiritual battle against the forces of darkness. The Exodus is, without a doubt, one of the most pivotal events in biblical history. But according to the Book of Jubilees, it's so much more than just the liberation of an enslaved people. It's a spiritual showdown between God and the forces of darkness. Picture this. Each plague in Egypt wasn't just a judgment against Pharaoh, but a direct strike against the spiritual entities ruling that nation. This perspective completely reshapes our understanding of what was at stake during the Exodus. Each plague sent to Egypt carried profound meaning. The Book of Jubilees suggests they didn't just challenge Egypt's gods, but revealed God's sovereignty over all creation. Take the turning of the Nile's water into blood. It wasn't just a display of power. It was a judgment against the river's deity. Imagine the impact of that act on a culture that worshipped the Nile as a source of life. It's as if God was saying, "I'm the real source of everything." The Exodus story also invites us to reflect on Moses' role as the intermediary between God and his people. He wasn't just a political leader, he was a vessel for God's divine will. Think about the courage it took to confront Pharaoh time and again, despite the threats and obstacles. Moses shows us how God can use ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things when they trust in his plan. According to Jubilees, the Exodus was predestined on the heavenly tablets, a divine record of all events that would unfold. This idea reminds us that God isn't just working in the present, he's in control of the past and future too. Imagine the sense of reassurance that can bring, knowing that even in our hardest moments, everything is in the Creator's hands. The role of the heavenly tablets in the Exodus is fascinating. They suggest that every step, from Moses' calling to the crossing of the Red Sea, was meticulously planned. It's a powerful reminder that nothing in our lives is random. Even the struggles we face might be part of a bigger plan designed for our spiritual growth and transformation. The crossing of the Red Sea is one of the most iconic moments of the Exodus. The Book of Jubilees frames it as more than just a physical miracle. It was a declaration of victory over the forces of darkness. Imagine what it meant for the Israelites to walk across dry land while the Egyptian army was wiped out. It wasn't just freedom. It was undeniable proof that God was with them every step of the way. Another key aspect of the Exodus is the institution of Passover, an eternal reminder of God's grace and protection. According to Jubilees, Passover was established as a perpetual celebration to remind the people of their redemption. It teaches us to cherish the moments when we experience divine grace and to never forget the blessings we've been given. Did you know that Jubilees also describes the role angels played in the Exodus? They weren't just passive observers. They actively helped carry out God's plans. This adds a heavenly dimension to the event, showing that the Exodus was a collaboration between the divine and the human. It's a powerful reminder that we're never alone in our struggles. Divine help is always within reach. The Exodus also teaches us about the importance of faith and obedience. The Israelites had to trust God in seemingly impossible situations, like standing before the Red Sea with an army at their backs. This story challenges us to ask ourselves, are we willing to trust God even when the odds are against us? Faith inspires us to believe that with God, nothing is impossible. By exploring the Exodus as a cosmic event, we see how it points to something even greater, the ultimate redemption of all humanity. Jubilees suggests the events of the Exodus were a foreshadowing of a broader plan that will culminate in the full realization of God's kingdom. This sets the stage perfectly for the next topic, where we'll dive into eternal laws and messianic prophecies that promise a future where justice reigns supreme. The Book of Jubilees introduces us to a powerful concept. God's laws are eternal and unchanging. They weren't created just for a specific time or people. They're inscribed on the heavenly tablets and govern both the spiritual and physical realms. Think about it. Every commandment, every instruction is part of a greater plan to bring order and harmony to creation. It's not just about following rules, it's about aligning with God's very heart. According to Jubilees, these laws weren't only given to Moses, they were also passed down to Adam, Noah, and Abraham. This reinforces the idea that they're universal, transcending time and culture. Imagine the significance of that. From the beginning of humanity, God has guided his people with the same principles, showing his will is constant and steadfast. It challenges us to reflect on our own lives. Are we living in sync with this eternal order? The laws described in the Book of Jubilees cover both moral and practical aspects, from instructions on honesty and justice to guidance on caring for the earth and animals. Every detail reflects God's care for all areas of life. It teaches us that our spirituality isn't separate from our daily actions. Every choice we make is an opportunity to honor God. One fascinating aspect is how Jubilees connects these laws to divine justice. It suggests that by following God's commandments, we align ourselves with what is just and good, both in heaven and on earth. Imagine the peace that brings, knowing that living according to God's laws contributes to the harmony of the universe. But the laws aren't just rules. They point to something greater. The Book of Jubilees emphasizes how they pave the way for the coming of the Messiah, the one who will bring complete redemption and establish a kingdom of justice. It reminds us that every commandment has a deeper purpose, to connect us with God's plan of salvation. Did you know that according to Jubilees, even angels are subject to God's laws? This demonstrates the universality of these principles and encourages us to take them seriously. If even celestial beings live in accordance with God's laws, how much more should we, as part of His earthly creation? Another intriguing point is how Jubilees describes the consequences of disobedience. It warns that straying from these laws leads to disorder and separation from God, while obedience brings blessings and fulfillment. Think about how that applies to our own lives. Every decision we make either draws us closer to or pulls us away from the Creator. Jubilees also highlights the hope of a future where these laws will be fully realized. It prophesies a time when the Messiah will reign and justice will prevail. This reminds us that even in the challenges of today, we can look forward with confidence to the fulfillment of God's plan. So, what does this mean for us now? The Book of Jubilees challenges us to live according to these laws today as preparation for the future kingdom. It's not just about following rules, it's about transforming our lives into reflections of God's will. How can you apply these principles in your daily life? And as we explore eternal laws and messianic prophecies, we're drawn to consider how God is working to restore His creation. The next chapter will give us a glimpse of the ultimate fulfillment of this plan, a messianic kingdom where justice and righteousness will reign forever, a journey that promises to inspire and challenge us to live with hope and purpose. After diving into the secrets and mysteries of the Book of Jubilees, it's clear that this ancient text offers a fresh perspective on God, time, and the events that shaped humanity. But the real question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you just tuck it away as another interesting fact? Or will you let it transform the way you see the world? Take a moment to reflect on how these eternal laws, cosmic battles, and messianic prophecies could impact your life. Are you living in alignment with divine principles? Or are the distractions of daily life pulling you away from your true purpose? Think about it. Maybe now's the time to align your choices with God's plan and step into the role He's designed for you. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of the Book of Jubilees resonated with you the most? Do you think these teachings can still be applied today? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share your reflections. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so we can keep exploring these deep and eye-opening topics together. Because let's be honest, what we've uncovered here is just the beginning. There's so much more to discover, and I want you to be part of this journey with me. See you in the next video, and may God bless you.